Okay guys, here is the tomatoes. First we have to wash it. This is like a 5, was it 10, 12 quarts or 10 liters bucket. So I have the large and small tomatoes from the garden and some pepper. So I've washed those over there. I just like to come to the garden tap to wash large items, and just so that I can film as well. So I'm just going to run cold water on it, wash it thoroughly, because we're going to can this in the jar. You don't want any bacteria at all, so just wash it thoroughly. Let me turn off the tap here. Okay, so we're going to take off all of this, like the stalk. But for now, we're just washing it. Hey, I'm back everyone. So here's the tomatoes. I've washed everything. I have some dried green pepper that I had in my fridge. I just added that. But here's tomatoes from the garden. I cut it up, getting ready to blend it. I'm going to add pepper, hot pepper, and I still need to take off the bottom, but I have hot pepper and red onions and bell pepper. So this is the combination I like. You know, if you want, you can add garlic and so on. So this is what I have, and I'm going to start blending it. In the meantime, I have my glass jars being washed in the dishwasher. Alternatively, you can also use hot water and soap to wash the glass jar. The key is to make sure we try and get as much bacteria away from this process, so that eventually the canned sauce can last outside the refrigerator, so in the cupboard for a long time. So the first step, I'm going to blend all this, cook it down. This is the way I make mine. There are so many ways to make it, but I like to make it this way. I cook it down before continuing with the process, which is to can them. But anyway, I'll take you guys along, so let's go. Okay, so we are done blending. I just used the regular kitchen blender, and I did not add water to my tomatoes and pepper. I just blended tomatoes first, so that created the sauce, and then I combined that with the onions and pepper. So this is all tomatoes, no water whatsoever. So I'm just going to allow it to cook down a little bit, and also to, kill any possible bacteria or anything in the tomatoes, just regular bacteria, since this is going to be stored outside the refrigerator. So we're going to cook it down. Some people cook their tomatoes before blending. I prefer to blend everything. I'm not straining or passing it through a sieve. I'm just using everything. So I'm cooking it down. Once the level gets to about maybe half of this big pot, I'll just now continue with the process. So the glass jars are clean. I'm going to cook the glass jars in a pot of hot water to make sure that the glass jars are sterilized completely before I add the cooked tomatoes in the glass jar. And then I'm going to add that glass jar with the tomatoes into a pot of boiling water to make sure everything on the exterior, the cap, everything is also sterilized. And that's all it takes. Okay, So at this point, I can add other things. I'm going to add basil in here when it's like 15 minutes into the cooking process. I'm going to add basil leaves just for added flavor, and then let it cook for another couple of minutes before I put in the glass jar. Okay, I'll carry you along. Okay, here it is. It's cooking. You just want to get rid of some of that excess water. We're not going to cook it down completely, but just enough to get rid of, to kill any bacteria, to cook it properly, and then cook down the liquid. Remember, there's no water in here. I see a piece of green pepper. Anyway, there's no water in here. It's just the tomato liquid. With onions, I can get the smell of onions, bell pepper. I'll allow it cook some more before I add my basil. That is just optional for me. I'm just going to throw in some basil leaves for flavor. I'm putting it in now so that if there's anything on the basil leaf, you know, it will also be sanitized as well, if you will. So I'm going to let it cook down. In the meantime, I'm leaving it open so that liquid can evaporate. In the meantime, see my mason jars? They are completely submerged in a big pot of water. So I have 8 mason jars, clean mason jars. So now I'm sanitizing it by putting it in a big pot. See that? By putting it in a big pot of water. It's completely submerged to the top of the mason jar. So this is going to boil as well. So I'm sanitizing the glass jars with the caps as well. So we're going to let that boil away. And while this is still boiling. Okay guys, here's the basil from the garden, fresh basil leaves. So I'm rinsing it out now. I'm going to add it to my tomato sauce that is cooking. You see, I'm not chopping it up or anything. I'm just going to throw it in whole. For flavor. I don't want to throw it into the jar later on because the basil leaf itself is not sanitized or cooked. So I'm just throwing it in. It's going to cook briefly before I turn the sauce off. See? So it's going to have a strong basil flavor, which is what I want. And the flavor will be concentrated in the tomato jars over time. So it's not going to cook for too long because the tomato sauce is almost, you see, the bottom is thick. It's getting thick. Do you see that, guys? So I'm just going to allow the basil to get hot before I turn this off and put it in jars. We'll check on the jars shortly, the mason jars or glass jars. I can get the smell of the basil already. So we're going to allow that. You see, it's getting thick. We don't want it too thick. It's a sauce, not paste. So it's up to you. It depends on your preference, but I don't want mine too thick because when I eventually want to make stew or a sauce, I can always add tomato paste. But I prefer this to be a sauce. It smells so good. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. Like I'm in Italy or something, in a restaurant, at a restaurant in Italy. It smells so good. So anyway, so it's going to cook for about another maybe 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get the jars ready. Okay, so here are the jars. They're cooking. It should be done. And the spoon that I'm going to use to scoop this into scoop the sauce into the jar, I'm going to sterilize that spoon in here. Let me show you the spoon I will be using. It's like a soup spoon. Here it is, guys. Look at the spoon. It's like a duck spoon. I don't know if you can see it. The head is like a duck. So it's a serving soup spoon, so I'm going to use it. But look at how beautiful that sauce looks. Okay, so we're almost there. Just a few more minutes. You see how it has gone down almost half this initial size, or the initial amount. I can smell the basil. Okay, we're almost there, guys. So it's almost done. I'm adding a little salt, about 2 tablespoons of salt. Oh, 2 teaspoons, sorry, 2 teaspoons of salt. It's almost done. I just added 2 teaspoons of salt. So we're going to turn that and add it to the glass jar. See, the glass jars are here, ready to go. They are very, very hot. So I don't want to even touch it with my bare hands. So I'm just going to put the sauce inside and get the caps right out of the hot water and cover it. Okay, and there we go. I've canned everything. Ooh, look at basil in here. It's extremely hot. It's extremely hot. So what I'm going to do now is to put them back into that big pot where I sterilize the glass and submerge everything and allow it to heat up really good to get rid of any possible bacteria that could be anywhere. At least this is how I do it. This is how it has worked for me. I mean, if there are other ways, let me know in the comment box below. We're all learning as well. So this works for me. So I'm going to put it back into the pot and allow the whole thing to cook. It's tightly sealed, so I just want to make sure that everything inside is free of, any possible bacteria that, because if you're not putting it in the fridge, if we're going to store it in the cupboard, you don't want it to spoil or have any sort of growth on the inside. So it's all about sterilizing everything, I think. So I'm going to put it back into the pot and we'll let it boil for a couple of minutes.